Alright guys, this past weekend was Kansas. I know last week it was a lot of complaining about how much Dover sucks, and to be honest, I kind of came into Kansas expecting to feel about the same. Both races last year did not really excite me that much, but this race was awesome. This was the opposite of everything that last week was. First of all, Ross Chastain wins a truck race. I was screaming, I was jumping up and down, I was shaking my fiance, and I could not believe what I was watching. So I went into this race not really all that excited, as I am with basically every truck race, but I'm always sort of hoping that Ross somehow, some way just finds himself up there. And he found himself up there pretty much the entire night, at least that I remember. And Stewart Friesen was kind of running away with this thing, and oh my god, Stewart Friesen, man, this guy. I don't really care about Stewart Friesen, really positive or negative, but it's just so crazy to watch a guy be in the truck series for this long and not win a race. This guy, I think, wins stage 1 and 2. He runs out of gas with like 3 laps to go. It's just crazy stuff, and it's what makes racing so much fun. But back to Ross Chastain. At one point, he was fully sideways, and the back end of his car was just inches from the wall, and he fell back a few positions and still somehow ends up in second place after, I think, a restart, and manages to win the race. There's one major downfall, though, to Ross's win. He is not eligible for any points in the truck series, and this sucks. But unfortunately, he made himself eligible for the Xfinity Championship. He has 3 top 5s and 7 top 10s, so he's finished in the top 10 in every single truck race this year, and now has a win. Meanwhile, he has just 1 top 10 in the Xfinity Series. Moving on, we have Brad Keselowski, who wins his 30th Cup win and his 3rd win of the year, which ties him with Kyle Busch. Speaking of Kyle Busch, unfortunately, at one point he was contending for the lead and in fact had the lead, and he drove through too many pit boxes and moved all the way back and only finished in 30th, which is super painful. Alex Bowman, though. Who would have thought this guy out of absolutely nowhere gets 3 second place finishes? It was one thing at Talladega because Talladega is sort of weird, but at Dover, an incredibly strong performance and even outrunning his teammate Chase Elliott. And again, this past weekend, he was in the lead for much of this thing and looked like he was actually going to dominate at one point. Mostly, this was all because Kevin Harvick had this really weird issue, I think with maybe 80 laps to go or so. It looks like there was a piece of plastic on the front of the grill, and I'm not really sure if that had something to do with it, but all of a sudden he complained that the car was falling apart or something, like the tire was loose maybe, I don't know. But he came down pit road in the middle of a green flag run, and his day was pretty much done after that. Tyler Reddick, another one. Where the heck did he come from? This dude looked like he was going to compete for the win at one point. This is only his 2nd start, and he's in like the 3rd car for RCR. He's in the old 31, which I think isn't even the same team because they all became the 8 team for Daniel Hemrick. So whoever the heck works for the 31 team, all of a sudden Tyler Reddick just showed up and was competing for the lead. This race had everything, passing all over the place. Guys doing way better than I ever expected. To be honest with you, at one point I was watching a restart and it just had that sort of like late night race Daytona feel to it. Maybe not that there was going to be a big one or something like that, but that it was anybody's race. There was tons of unusual characters in the top 10, and it really felt like it was going to be a special finish, and it really was. So looking at the top 10, we had obviously Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman, Eric Jones, Chase Elliott, Clint Bowyer, Jimmy Jam, Kurt Busch, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Chris Buescher. The only Toyota in the top 10, and we'll get to that, and 3 of the 4 Hendricks Chevys in the top 10. Jimmy Johnson actually at one point looked like he was going to compete for the lead. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., by the way, was doing excellent in this race and was contending for the lead. I think even took the lead a couple of times in the beautiful Sunny D car, I might add. So we had 7 Chevys in the top 10, 2 Fords and only 1 Toyota. Technically, maybe should have been more like 2 Toyotas with Kyle Busch, which would have knocked out maybe one of the Chevys. But even still, as it finished, 7 Chevys. Now, the story over the past year has been the fact that the Chevys have been awful ever since they switched to the Camaro. The only legitimate wins in the past year from Chevy have all come from Chase Elliott. Now, I say legitimate because Austin Dillon won the Daytona 500, but like half the field was gone at that point, and he sort of just turned Eric Almirola for the win. Not to discredit it, a win's a win, I get it. I was happy to see the 3-car in victory lane, even though I don't really like Austin Dillon. But regardless, Chase Elliott won all of his races by just being significantly better than the rest of the field throughout the race. So to see 7 Chevys up there is quite the improvement. There is a lot of potential for the Chevy drivers, and the Fords are clearly still strong. Speaking of which, Stewart-Haas, who dominated last season, have looked pretty mediocre and subpar this season, and all 4 of them qualified in the top 4 this weekend. Now, 2 of them failed inspection and fell to the back. That was Almirola and Suarez, but Harvick led a ton of laps in this race and won a couple stages, I think. And if it hadn't been for a late issue, then he probably would have won this thing. And in some of my favorite news, if you check out my Instagram, you'll know that I am a huge diecast fan, and there is some new paint schemes and diecast coming out that I'm extremely excited about. First of all, have you seen Kyle Busch's new ride? It's this beautiful light blue, almost teal. It looks fantastic. It's bright. I ordered the Elite and the 164 of this car, so you will definitely see that on my Instagram at some point. Jimmy Jam also ended up getting a cool paint scheme for the Coke 600. It is going to be an all desert camo, and it will still have Ally Bank all over it, and I think that's his only sponsor at this point. Also, 2 fantastic race wins for this weekend. Brad Keselowski in a super awesome paint scheme for Worth, and it has a torn off quarter panel, a shredded tire it looks like. He blew that thing apart, and an unbelievable amount of confetti is all over this thing, and it matches the paint scheme with red and white. It looks gorgeous. I can't wait for this thing. And Ross Chastain as well had a pretty good looking truck. It's white with sort of a neon green and some black and things like that on it. But there is this awesome blue and white confetti all over this thing, covering the whole truck, much like Brad Keselowski. These things are going to look so awesome, and I can't wait. I will be getting obviously both of those, and also the 164th of Ross Chastain's. I think that's all of the main bulk of the news. So if you haven't checked out my Instagram, go check it out. I'm going to be posting diecasts all of the time on there. I order way too many, so it's always full of content. I also try to do some little videos on there and that kind of thing. Oh, also this weekend is the All-Star race, and I'm also getting married the exact same day, and probably am going to miss almost the entire race, if not the entire race. So probably won't have much for thoughts, and probably won't even do a video for the All-Star race. So if that's the case, then I will see you after the Coke 600. So if anything crazy happens, I will try to make a video if I can, but if nothing too extraordinary happens, I will see you then. So have a good one, and I will see you in the future.